ביאור משנה ג' explanation of משנה ג' משנתנו מוסיפה ללמד, המשנה continues to teach us, שאין תומכים טרחה יתרה בהאכלת הבהמות והעופות בשבת. Again, you're not allowed to work extra hard when you feed your animals and birds on Shabbat. אין אובסים את הגמל. You're not allowed to stuff the camel. And again, it's like with the ducks they do today. You used to stuff them in order to eat them, to make them eat fast. נוהגים it says, why would you do that to a camel? Because if you can't really force feed a sheep, because it has a limit of how much it can eat. A camel, on the other hand, is able to eat more or less. So before you go on a trip, like for say 3 weeks in the desert, you want to make sure that's right. You fill up the clean that you don't give him a regular feeding. You give him extra feeding because he can keep the food for another 4 or 5 days in his system. So that's why they used to do it. נוהגים לפטם את הגמל, it is the custom to stuff the camel, לפני המציאה למדבר, before he goes out to the desert. היינו להאכילו הרבה בבת אחת, to feed him a lot at one time. לעשות לו אבוס בתוך מאב, to stuff him inside of his stomach, כדי שיספיק לו לכמה ימים, so that it's going to be enough for him for a few days. ובא המשנה ללמד, the Mishnah comes to teach you, שאין עושים אותו בשבת. You're not allowed to do it on Shabbat, again, because it's extra work. משום טרחה יתרה, because of the extra work. ולא דורסים בכוח את האוכל לתוך גרונו. And you're not allowed to, even if you don't want to feed him a lot, there's a place where you can put the food into his mouth where he has to swallow. You're not allowed to put it so much into his mouth. You can feed him, you can give it, but don't take a handful and stuff it down his mouth, so he has to swallow it. עד שלא יאכל זאת. אבל מלעיטים. כלומר, שאם הגמל אינו רוצה לאכול, but if the camel doesn't want to eat, נותנים את המאכל לתוך פיו. You are allowed to put the food into his mouth. והוא בולעו מעליו, but don't stuff it down his throat, down his mouth, to the place where he has to swallow it, but you're allowed to feed it, hand feed it. Okay, that when it comes to the camel, we know how to feed the camel now. ואין ממרים את העגלים, and we do not do an action called mamrim, the small calves. המראת העגלים, says what does it mean mamrim the calves? היינו שמרביצים אותם, it says you lay them down, ותוכבים אוכל מעורב במים לתוך גרונם, and you mixed food together with water into the throat, עד שאינם יכולים להחזירו, until a place they have to swallow just like the camel. ואין ממריאים אותם בשבת משום דריכה יתרה. You don't do it with calves at all, because you want to make them nice and fat on Shabbat at all, because it's extra work. They will eat the way it is. אבל מלעיטין את העגלים, but you're allowed to do an action called להלעיט the calves. שנותנים את האוכל לתוך פיהם, you're allowed to put hand feed them בדרך רגילה, in a regular manner, עד למקום שיכולים להחזיר, but don't stuff it down their throat so that they'll have to swallow it. Next one. ומהלקטין לתרנגולין, and you're allowed to hand feed chickens. תוכבים את האוכל לתוך פיהם של התרנגולים, you're allowed to put the food into the mouth of chickens. ויש מפרשים נותנים האוכל ביד והתרנגולים מקטים אותו. There's two opinions. One, you're allowed to put it directly in the mouth, and the other opinion is no, you just allowed to hand feed them, but don't put them in the mouth. Two opinions, okay? ונותנים מים למורסן, and you're allowed to put water into the מורסן. What's a מורסן? פסולת הקמח. This is the remainders when you used to make the flour, the bad part of the flour you're allowed to mix with water. Coarse brand. לשם מאכל בהמה. So that the animal will eat it. Otherwise you make porridge for them. אבל לא גובלים. אין לשים את המורסם במים. But you do not put the porridge into the water. Again, the idea is do it in a different manner than you do it on Shabbat. And you do it in a regular weekday, I mean. ואין נותנים מים לפני דבורים ולפני יונים שבשבח. Oh, this is an interesting part. The question is, you're allowed on Shabbat to feed domesticated animals. Because they're your animals, they're your responsibility. They're going to die if you're not going to feed them. The question comes, are doves, if you have doves in your property, are they considered to be domesticated or not? Because the doves really don't need you. See, all the other animals need you for the survival. If you're not going to feed them, they're not going to survive, your animals. But the doves are going to survive without you. They fly, they eat, they come back. But you want to give them extra, it's your doves, you want to give them extra food. Are you allowed to feed them on Shabbat? That's the question. Or the same question with honey, with bees. Again, they survive without you, they don't need you to survive. But if you feed them, there will be healthier bees or healthier doves. So the question is, are you allowed to feed those kind of animals that are half domesticated, half wild on Shabbat? So let's see. אין נותנים מים לפני דבורים ולפני יונים שבשובח. We do not give water in front of. Oh, this is something that a lot of people have to remember. You're not allowed to feed animals on Shabbat. That are not yours. They're not your responsibility. Wild animals, you're not allowed to feed on Shabbat. Give them water or whatever. So it says you're not allowed to give water and to doves or to bees on Shabbat. בשבת. לפי שדרכם לעוף ומוציאים להם מים באגמים, because they are flying and they can get water in other places, in lakes. והרי זאת טרחה שלא לצורך. And this is extra work that is not needed. אבל נותנים אוכל ומים בשבת לפני אווזים ותרנגולים, but you're allowed to do it in front of geese and in front of chickens, even though they can fly also a little bit, the geese and the chickens, but they usually remain in one place. In other words, they rely on you on food, unlike the doves and the bees. הגדלים בבית, because those are domesticated for sure. This is where they stay. ולפני יונים הרדסיות. And also, if you have special kinds of doves, it's called Hardesian doves. In front of them, you're allowed to give water. Min yonei bait הנקראות הרדסיות. This is a type of a dove. על שם הורדוס המלך, they are called הרדסיות because of Horus the king. שהיה מגדל מהם בארמונו, that he used to grow them in his palace. כל אלו הואיל ואין דרכם לעוף מן הבית, because they are so domesticated, these kind of doves, that they remain at your home at all times. מוטל על בעליהם להאכילם ולהשקותם. You have to feed them. You know what would be a common thing today? A cat. Even though a cat doesn't need you, he can survive out in the wild, he can drink whatever from the neighbor's pools, and he can eat from everything. Still, it looks like from here, since it is domesticated enough that you're allowed to feed him on Shabbat. הילקח נותנים לפניהם אוכל ומים בשבת. Therefore, you're allowed to give in front of them water and food on Shabbat.
That's a cat that's yours.
That's a cat, the neighbor's cat, you're not allowed to. Right. That's for sure not. Very good.
Even if he's coming by all the time because you're feeding him, he's not yours.
It's not your responsibility.